Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to National Matters, 14th of February. This edition is about the economy. And of course, through COVID, no nation has been spared. America is crying, South Africa is crying, every nation, including China. And in the studio tonight, I have Professor YAMBAYAMBA to help me make us understand where is the missing link. How can we rebuild the economy? Professor YAMBAYAMBA is a lecturer at Mulungushi University and is the president of sciences in this nation and other things before I mislead the nation. Professor YAMBAYAMBA, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Pastor. I'm very glad to be here. And good evening, viewers.
You are not a stranger to this station. You've been here. Some people who know you, they know who Professor YAMBAYAMBA, but there are those who've just jetted in.
Yes.
The country who may not know who Professor YAMBAYAMBA is.
Yes, yes.
Who is Professor YAMBAYAMBA?
Thank you, Pastor. Let me introduce myself. So my full name is Kavwanga Egbetskazwe YAMBAYAMBA. I'm Associate Professor of Animal Physiology. So I'm a scientist teaching at Mulungushi University. Currently, I'm the Dean of the School of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Apart from that, I'm also, as you said, I'm President of the Zambia Academy of Sciences, and in this program, I'll be discussing things from that angle, from the scientific angle, you know, where the missing link is. I'm sure there have been a lot of discussions from political angles, from economics angles, and so on. But I'll be discussing from the scientific angle. Then I'm also president of the Agricultural Institute of Zambia. I'm the immediate past vice president of Transparency International. I'm also a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the National Biosafety Authority. And of course, I'm a family man. I'm an educationist. I've been in the education sector for almost 36 years now. I'm
interested to know your family. You've just graced through. You're a family man.
Yes, I've got my lovely wife and 3 children, a granddaughter, so...
My goodness. Yeah.
Yes, so that's briefly about me. But as I mentioned, I'm here in my capacity as the president of the Zambia Academy of Sciences.
Professor, we will get in the areas of the economy. But one question comes to my mind. Why is it that Zambia does not produce top world-class scientists? When I say Zambia, maybe we don't hear about them. Let me withdraw that statement. Why is it that here in Zambia, we do not have international scientists like we were blessed in the medical field? We have got a lot of achievements through Professor Munkonge being one of the professors who separated the Siamese twins in South Africa. That is in history, and he has done so many things. Now the man is old, and those coming behind him, they have to pick it up. We have in this nation Dr. Schizia, who the nation may not know. At the time we chatted and we celebrated with him, and when CNN came to cover him, he was one of the top 3 endoscopic surgeons in the world. The American, the Ugandan, and the Zambian. And the CNN came for him here covered him extensively for some days. That is in the medical field. But when we talk, I know that is part of science, but that's medical.
Yes.
Why is it that we don't have top-class scientists who can say, excuse me, Mr. President, Madam Minister of Health, before you inject people with this COVID thing, we need to interrogate it to find out what is in this injection and others to assure the people of Zambia?
Certainly that's a loaded question and a very good question. And you are right, Pastor, that I think when you scan through the entire Zambian population, we have isolated cases. We'll say, oh yeah, this is a top-class scientist, or medical scientist, or practitioner, or whatever. They're isolated cases. Yeah. But generally, okay, and I'm making a general statement here, okay, we do not have adequate human capital to deal with the complexities of our economy. Remember, we are part of the global economy.
That's right.
And it means that we must survive within this global economy. And we must compete, not only survive, but we must compete. Not just compete for the sake of competing, but competing to be number one. That must be what everybody should be striving for. That's the way the world is. We must compete to be on top of everyone else. But I think before I go into this, what I've termed human capital, let's begin from the beginning. We look at Zambia as a nation, Zambia as a country, the wealth that we have in Zambia. In terms of natural resources, Zambia is not a poor country.
No, it's not.
In fact, you know, I was watching a video clip yesterday where, you know, some African countries have been classified in the top 10. And Zambia is one of the top 10.
It ranks fourth.
Yes, it ranks fourth. So in terms of natural resources, Zambia is a very rich country. In fact, all African countries are very rich, actually. There's really no African country which is poor in terms of natural resources. What do we have? We have several things. The land that we have 75 million hectares in this country. That's plenty of land. 58% of that is arable land for agriculture. It means about 42 million hectares are there. We have the sun, we have plenty of sun in this country. We have got plenty of water. 40 to 45% of the water in the SADC region is in this country. We have minerals, copper, gold, zinc, and many other minerals, the precious minerals. We have, you know, biodiversity, very high biodiversity, more than 12,500 species. 2/3 of those being animals, and a third being plants, and many, many other things. 400 or close to 500 forest reserves, 59 botanical gardens. That's a lot of wealth that this country has. And yet, when you look at it from the other side, what is it that we utilize? Let's talk about the land itself. 42 million hectares are available to us for agricultural use. We only utilize 14% of that.
As we get into those statistics, I know that you scientists, you are into figures and proving this and that. As we get into those statistics, Professor, are you putting the blame on you scientists that the reason why Zambia is where it is, it's because, one, you are not many, or two, you are not many qualified scientists? I want to understand why Zambia is not where it's supposed to be. From the human capital point of view you brought, why is it that?
Yeah, it is both. It is both. We are not many, but also when you look at the competence levels of those who are there, okay, there is also a challenge there. So not every scientist, okay, has got the competence that really they should have. So it is both. The numbers are few, but also the competence levels among those who are few. For example, if you take, if you read through the science, technology, and innovation policy, it's a very recent.
This is by the government of Zambia.
Yes, of course. This is a government. It's a government publication. Okay, it's a government policy. Okay, if you read in there, okay, you find that the number of scientists in the whole country is very small. There is a statement in there which says any nation that aspires to be a middle-income country, that nation needs 1,000 scientists for every 1 million inhabitants.
1,000?
1,000 scientists for every 1 million inhabitants.
Meaning our small population of 18 million,
18 million we
are supposed to have 1.8 million. 100 and...
1,000 times...
100 and... 180,000, I think.
Yes, for, you know, every million is 1,000. So this would be 18,000.
That would be 18,000, that's right.
Yes, yeah, it would be 18,000.
And we are not there yet.
We are not anywhere there.
18,000?
Yeah. You see, NEPAD in 2010 took stock of the scientists in every country. In Zambia, there were only 50 scientists per 1 million inhabitants. 50.
Instead of 1,000.
Instead of 1,000. So where are the other 950? They are not there. If you go further reading this particular policy, you find that, well, in fact, maybe today we're not even 50, but the numbers have even dwindled. We don't have the current statistics, but for now, that's the official statistic that is in this government policy, the STI policy. Okay, so there are very, very few. And quite obviously with those small numbers, you don't expect, Zambia to move at the pace that it should for us to arrive at a stage where we can say we are now a middle-income country. I know there is a 2030 vision we're saying we should be a middle-income country, but I'll leave it to you and the countrymen and women out there. If that is possible, by 2030, are we going to be a middle-income country?
In the next 8 years.
Exactly. Just looking at the numbers of the scientists. Okay. But let me get back to where I was. I started giving some statistics.
Yes, before you get to the statistics,
yes.
Professor, I'm equally interested if then we have 18,000 scientists, just assuming.
Yes.
18,000 scientists, okay? Why is it that Zambia doesn't know about that policy? And also the statement you've brought that in every million there has to be 1,000 scientists. Why is it that the government, all the governments, not just UPND, probably this could be excused if they are just in office for a few months. The previous governments, why is it that they don't talk scientific language to help a common man like me to understand that we need scientists in this nation?
I think this is the missing link. Pastor, as we go through this discussion, we will all come to realize why, in fact, things are the way they are. You know, we are very good at writing documents. This is one thing. In fact, let me say to the countrymen and women, the youths, you know, watching this particular program, that most of the things that I'm going to say here, they are not new things. They are not new things at all. They are there. The only problem is that people have, you know, they don't have a full story of where the problem is. Okay, the story is disjointed. Okay, so this one may have a piece of information about this one may have another piece of information, and so on. But you see, the story is not complete. And hence, in this program, by the end of this program, we shall have a complete story. Yes, and that's a good question. Why is it that people don't know that, well, in fact, this is what, you know, we need 1,000 scientists per every 1 million inhabitants? It's a good question. But I think, as we discuss, this question will be answered. Why? We don't know. So, but as I mentioned, there are a lot of documents that are out there, government documents. Okay? How many people actually bother to read these documents and say, oh my goodness me, so this is what is happening, but why are things like this? Okay? How many people bother to do that? All these things will be answered as we discuss. So then you find that some of these numbers that are in these documents, okay, those of us from academia, we simply use these numbers for our proposal writing and, you know, winning projects to do research here and there, sponsored by, not ourselves, but sponsored by other people from outside the country. That is where we are. So we leave now these statistics to just academic matters. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that.
Professor, you must forgive me. I wish I could be in your shoes to know what you know, but the Bible says, let each man abide in his calling. This is where God has called me. But would we also apportion the blame to governments? I want to get this clear, because I remember where you are seated, I had the then Minister of Information, Madam Dora Sidia, and I told her that the problem with you government people, you don't disseminate information. You don't educate the masses. All you are interested in is to politic, to win votes, but to pass on the information which is critical. This is where many nations are crippled.
Yeah.
Would you say that the governments are also to blame, that instead of fielding and promoting, like they promote corruption, they promote this, would you say they are also to blame that they don't have a mind of bringing the academias together and say, what can you do for Mother Zambia? I've never had that conference. If I tell you you've had it, I've never heard of it in this nation.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Pastor, I think all of us must take the blame one way or another. Okay, I will not point fingers that, you know, it is that one or it is there. Or I think each one of us must take part of the blame. However, there are people sitting in the driving seat.
Like the government.
Of course.
We should not be afraid.
Of course.
To call a spade.
Government is in the driving seat.
Yes.
And therefore, when you are in the driving seat, you are the one to steer, you know, whether it is the car, it is the ship, or whatever it is, to the right direction. So while all of us, yes, we can take a blame, but government ultimately, because government is the leader. I know people say that, no, but you are also government. No, yes, all of us are part of government. All of us are part of government. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that there are those who are entrusted with the authority and power to steer the ship.
Professor, one crime that I've committed in this nation and in my life is to think straight and to tell it as it is.
Yeah.
Why I'm also wanting you not to excuse the government. I cannot implement anything without government. I cannot say anything. For us to run this television station, the government had to enact laws.
Yeah.
And to say we need media freedom.
Yes. Yes.
They suggest. So it's just an example. If President HH called for a meeting to say first week of March, I want to meet all the scientists at Intercontinental or PAMOS. We'll be having a meeting. Let's get to know each other. What can we do for Mother Zambia?
Yeah.
Even those with bad qualifications in sciences, you'll find them there. This is why I'm saying the government should take the blame. Yeah. And if we don't look at that, we'll keep on chickening out from certain facts, and our country will never develop.
Right, right. Now, you're very right, Pastor. You see, government is the one that creates an environment. Okay? You see, we all have different competences. Okay, if you divide the economy into different sectors, you know, you have got government, the public sector, you've got the private sector, you've got, you know, the NGO sector, you've got communities, and so each of these has their own competence. Okay? Government's competence is to create an environment, to create an environment in which everybody must work to succeed, to contribute to the betterment of society. Okay, so they make laws, they make policies, they're responsible for much of the infrastructure to make sure that, you know, everybody has access to the services, you know, that are being provided. That's government's role. It is not anybody else's role. That's government's to create this. And therefore, when it comes to issues of scientists must be given the space. You know, in many other countries, I've had an opportunity, you know, to travel to many countries in Africa and outside Africa. I've been to all the corners of Africa, and I've seen how some countries do things. Regularly, those of us in academia, you know, we have what is called the academia, government, private sector, community collaboration. So we must be meeting regularly and discuss what are the challenges out there. Communities will come with their own problems to say, well, look, this is what we are facing as a community. Okay? The private sector is there because the private sector's competence is to create wealth. In academia, we do a lot of research. R&D, as we call it, you know, research and development. Yeah? And when you come together as academia, as government, as the private sector and communities, and you identify challenges, mainly it will be the communities identifying challenges. So this is what we are faced with. Okay, and then, okay, so what is it that we can do? And you see, government is there to provide the leadership. If government misses from that collaboration, things don't work. So government is extremely important. So certainly there has been a lot of failure on the part of government. Yeah.
This, Professor, for a person like myself who wants to live and see a better Zambia,
Yeah.
you've been our speakers in the agriculture conferences.
Yes.
You've impacted a lot of knowledge to my wife and I, and the people that have come there. I've just discovered that all these years, Zambia has been doing the agriculture, basing their knowledge on what our grandmothers used to tell us. There is no scientific research.
Right.
And today, I remember the last time you were on this show, and it touched me. I will remind you in case you have forgotten.
No, I cannot forget.
You said the problem that we have here, our friends, they've gone so much into research that what they can produce on 1 hectare, in Zambia, it would take probably 10 hectares to produce the same, which is a wastage of land.
That's
if
right.
it's in China, half an acre, even Israel, when they produce even tomatoes or whatever, it will take a big farmer to do the same. All because those people are so much buried into research and development. Why not Zambia? Even the few, those 50 that we have.
Okay. I think just allow me, Pastor, to go back a little bit. Let me just backtrack a little bit to where I started. Yes. So I talked about the wealth that this country has. Okay. But look at the utilization of what we have. I mentioned already that in terms of the same agriculture that you're talking about, we utilize only 14% of the land that is available to us. 14%. Okay? There's about 2.75 million hectares of land suitable for irrigation. That land, only 5.7% is irrigated. We receive 160 billion cubic meters of water from rains every year. We utilize 60 billion. 160 cubic meters in volume. That's volume. 160 billion cubic meters.
And we utilize 60 billion.
The 100 billion is lost.
It goes to waste.
It goes to waste. You can talk about many other things. So already it tells you our capacity to utilize the very resources that we have. Consequently, because of that lack of capacity, we are a poor nation. In fact, very poor. We are among those that are called the least developed countries, LDCs. That's where we are, with all the wealth that we have. And the statistics about ourselves are not very good. When you talk about poverty levels, for example, I think the official statistics that are still there. I know we have got some old statistics from 2015, but these are still the official statistics. Okay, because I don't think that we've got any new studies that have been done to come up with new statistics that will now be official. But we are still at about 61%, of poverty incidence in the country, with all the wealth that we have. Lusaka province, if you go province by province, Lusaka province has got the least poverty incidence at 20%. Now, 20% is a big figure, but that's the lowest that we have. Next is the Copper Belt at about 31%. Next is the Central Province, where I'm coming from, at about 57%.
57%?
Yes. Then followed by Southern Province, also about somewhere there, 58%. And then the rest of the provinces from 66 to about 82%. Western Province is actually, it tops the list at 82%. Northern Province is at about 81%. That's the incidence of poverty in our country, averaging about 61%, with all the wealth that we have. Not only that, when we come to nutrition, it's not a very good story, Pastor, because when you look at the stunting levels in our nation, we stand at about 40%. There's a publication, it's a scientific publication, and since some scientists, I like to use data that have been published scientifically. Stunting levels stand at about 40.4%. Northern Province tops the other provinces in terms of stunting of the under 5 children, 49%. And so then from 49 we come, I think the lowest is about 36. And so when you average, we are about 40.4%.
My goodness.
So those are the official statistics. Now, what this means, Pastor, is that despite all the land, despite the plenty of sun, despite plenty of water, despite plenty of everything else, we just do not have the capacity. So I'm now coming back to the question that you started with. We just do not have adequate human capacity to deal with the complexities of the economy. I don't mean that everybody is incompetent. No. They're isolated cases. So what do I mean? We shall unpack it now slowly so that everybody gets the full story. When I say we do not have the human, adequate human capital, what do I mean? By human capital, I mean human beings who are competent. And by competence, I mean one should be knowledgeable. One should have the skill, and one should have the right attitude. Okay? So we have the knowledge, we have the skill, we have the attitude, positive attitude towards work. When you scan through the Zambian population, Pastor, I want you to be referring to these three things. Okay? The knowledge, the skill, and the attitude. The attitude, yeah. Exactly. In fact, if I may just maybe unpack further what I mean by skill. Okay? It is a skill to do things. Okay? Skill, for example, to process our copper, our gold. Skill to process our food that we produce. Skill to process our our forests, and so on and so on. In other words, to add value, value addition. When you look at our economy, okay, you can actually segment it into maybe three. At the bottom here, we have the primary sector. Primary sector, this is where we're just producing or extracting our minerals or producing our food and, you know, so just producing things without value addition. Okay? And then we have the next layer is now value addition. And the top layer is now the tertiary sector. This is where we are doing trading. Where are we as Zambians? Where are we? Mainly, we are at the primary level or at the tertiary level where we are trading.
And we are not adding value.
We are not adding value. Again, I want you to get me right. I'm making general statements here. I'm not saying there is completely nothing in terms of value addition. But on average, we say that you know, we are a nation that does not have the capacity to add value. In fact, you know, in terms of high tech, look where we are in the studio here. I can see all kinds of gadgets. None of these gadgets was made in Zambia.
No.
These things came from elsewhere. That's what I'm talking about. Value addition. So the copper that you produce, don't send it in its raw form like copper cathodes. That's all we know. We have been doing this since independence. The food that we produce, we just produce, it's just food. If it is tomatoes, it's just tomatoes. Maize, it's just maize, we just mill it into, you know, milling meal for us to eat in Shima. Beans, it's just beans, we just eat beans as beans, and so on, and so on. That is all we do. But, Pastor, real wealth creation can only come if we have the skill to innovate. Innovation is the only way to real wealth creation. Every day, and it is on our lips, all of us, that we have no money, we have no money, we have no money. Is it true that we have no money?
I don't believe that.
And unless by money we mean the physical dollar or the physical kwacha that we see. That is not money. That's a metaphor. It's an image of money. True money is the ability, okay? The ability to create wealth. And our ability, where is our ability coming from? From our mental capacity. And so now, I think at this point, I'm now ready to now go into that question you asked. Why is it that, you know, we are where we are? Why are we not doing this thing that I'm talking about?
Let me refer to something, Professor, which you have said, that unless we mean money means kwacha, it means the money in the bank. I was privileged to have lunch sometimes last year with a Jewish person, very accomplished. And where we were, he looked at the trees.
Yes.
And he said, you know, Pastor, you have no idea how your country is rich.
Very true.
I said, what makes you say so? He was a visitor. And he says, you see all these leaves? This is a lot of money.
Too much money, actually.
Then he says, do you realize the same forest you burn, that grass there,
right,
which you burn, can bring a lot of foreign exchange.
Absolutely.
To the nation.
Yes.
And this is what you are talking about, that we lack skill. We lack knowledge sometimes. And our attitude as Zambians, we just see grass, especially people from Eastern, our our tribal cousins, when they see grass, they see rats, and they bend the whole money. You know, how can you develop a nation like that?
No. You see, Pastor, unless we have these three things, okay? And I would like to challenge all of us, countrymen and women, the youths and so on. Let's challenge ourselves. Think about these three things that I've talked about, okay? And judge yourself. I'm not going to judge anyone. Judge yourself. Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the skill? The skill to create things, create new things. That's what I'm talking about. Innovation, where you can create a product like a phone. You can, so it's manufacturing. You can create a new idea. You can create a new theory. So it's about creating things. That's the skill that I'm talking about. And of course, the knowledge is what drives you to do the right things. I'll be coming to that in a moment. How do we acquire these three things? So it now takes me to where the missing link is. Yeah. What will it take? What will it take for Zambia to become a developed country? It's not a very straightforward route. It requires a lot of investment. Sometimes when I sit and look today, okay, we are telling the youths, for example, we want you to do this. Don't simply sit. We want you to do this, and so on and so on. The question is, how are these youths going to do what you're asking them to do? You ask them to go into agriculture. You ask them to go into aquaculture. You ask them to go into, you say, okay, let's form cooperatives. And I think these are great ideas. These are great ideas. But you see, there's something missing in these youths. See, the competence, the knowledge, the skill
and the attitude.
Even agriculture, which we say, and there's this perception that agriculture is the easiest thing that we can do. How I wish it were that easy. Because I think Zambia and Africa in general would be the most developed country. If agriculture was that easy, where everybody, you send them there, and they start doing great things, it would be a developed country. But really, Pastor, if you just take agriculture alone, where are we? Where are we? Can we really say to ourselves, we are doing great in agriculture? I know there are a lot of initiatives, and there are a lot of people who are trying to enter into this space. Sometimes, I say to myself as a professional, I say, are we becoming desperate? Where everybody thinks they are experts in this area, and they must go in there and even begin advising other people and so on. I think we need to bring professionalism. But then let me get now back to the real issue, where the missing link is. As far as human capital is concerned, where is the missing link? There are only two areas where we can build human capital and say we now have adequate human capital in our country. Number one is nutrition. Number two is education. What do I mean? Pastor, nutrition is the number one thing towards creating human capital. The human journey begins in the womb of our mothers. At conception, the human journey begins. And so this human being will grow and develop and then become, when they are born, grow and become an adult and contribute to society. It's quite a long journey. Now, there is what we call the first 1,000 days of life. This is from conception to somewhere around two years. The first 1,000 days. These 1,000 days are the most critical days in the human journey. We're talking about creating human capital, and we have begun from the womb of our mothers. We don't begin when we are born, when we are adults, but it's from there. Because we must grow and develop physically and mentally. I'll focus more on the mental development. Okay? Remember, I talked about stuntedness, among the under 5s. We're at 40%. Okay? So I would like to, to link what I'm talking about to that statistic that I talked about. Our mothers must eat very good food while we are developing in the womb of our mothers. And when we are born, we must continue receiving the best nutrition. Why? Because the human brain, which is actually, if you look at those 3 things that I talked about, the
knowledge, skill, and attitude.
Exactly. Those are functions of the human brain. And therefore, we must worry about how the brain develops. We must be concerned. During these 1,000 days, part of these 1,000 days, this is when you have the highest rate of brain cell multiplication. Okay? Brain cells are called neurons. Okay? We call them neurons, a scientific term. But more importantly, brain cells connect to each other, forming what we call neural pathways through which messages must pass. You are here, I'm here. We are able to discuss this because of these brain connections, which we call synapses. In fact, during these 1,000 days, for every 1 second, for part of those 1,000 days, there are over 1 million synapses, connections that are formed every 1 second. So, by the time the child is 3 years old, the brain is at 80% of the adult. By the time the child is 5 years old, the brain is at 90% of the adult. Why am I mentioning this? It's because this is what will make this human being, okay, this human being become an asset when they grow up.
Now, thank God for your explanation and education from the scientific point of view.
Yeah.
I want to ask, we come to reality.
Yes.
Are you saying that why is it that the politicians sometimes there is no knowledge of these things, there is no skill, and the attitude, scientific knowledge I'm talking about. Are you saying that most of the politicians, they missed their first 1,000 days?
I think, Pastor,
Yes.
I want to leave this to the interpretation of the Zambians out there. Each one of us should be able to interpret where we are. Okay? But the 1,000 days are very critical. So, there are some very specific nutrients, that each one of us requires during those. In fact, let me take it just to the 5 years, the under 5. You know, that's, you know, the under 5s are very special, and that's why there's even an under 5 clinic and so on and so on. But this is the most critical. This is in human life, this is the most critical stage, because when we miss it there, that's it. We cannot get back to say, oh, now I can have, you know, good nutrition. It is gone. So we need to eat well. Our mothers need to eat well. Protein, okay? Polyunsaturated fatty acids like the omega-3, omega-6, okay? And then there are micronutrients like iron, iodine, zinc, selenium, choline, vitamin B9, okay, or folic acid. Yeah, I forget the 7th one. But these are very critical nutrients for our brain development, and in particular when it comes to formation of these synapses that I talked about. And what that means is that when we have all the synapses formed, and by the way, by the time a child is 3 years old, you have got to over 1,000 trillion synapses, okay, formed. And why am I talking about all these things? It's because this is what gives the child the capacity to think at a high level. So just nutrition. Nutrition is the first thing that we must focus on. And yet, Pastor, where are we in terms of nutrition? What do we talk about mainly? We talk about maize. We don't talk about the total package.
Professor,
but we talk about maize. Maize doesn't give you everything. It gives you starch for energy. That's it.
Professor,
yes,
let me stop you for a moment.
Yeah.
I'll ask my wife to probably create a program for you scientists, and you come and teach us about nutrition. Peradventure, God may reverse our backwardness through good nutrition, even though we missed the first 1,000 years, days.
Yes.
In Bemba, there is a saying. You understand the Bemba, Professor?
Yes, of course. I come from the north. Yeah.
In Bemba, there is a saying, Atubuchushi Bupamano. When you go through suffering a lot, you process a lot, and you don't have the knowledge that Professor YAMBAYAMBA has, and you look at where the surroundings, there is that inborn, created by God, that uneasiness to say I was not born for this kind of life.
Yeah.
And like a caterpillar, you start going through the changes.
Yeah.
So that you can, peradventure, someday you may fly. Now, that said, there are a lot of people that have come from poverty-stricken people, and one of the best presidents that lived in Brazil was De Silva, who came from the mother, the father, who were not a people. They would have a meal once in 2 days. But he became president. And he became one of the best presidents of Brazil.
Right.
You know, and I know a lot of people with such kind of background. However, putting science aside, why is our economy in the stage it is at? I just want you to help me understand how can we rebuild? Admittedly, that most of us missed our first 1,000 years, as you days, as you are saying. But can't we correct the economy?
Yes, of course we can. We can. And this is why I'm giving you this as the basis of correcting the economy. Where do we want to invest? Because first of all, when you invest, Pastor, you should have competent people. Yeah? And of course, agreeing with you, and even in this country, I think there are a lot of people, there are a few people who come from, such backgrounds as described about that president, Brazil. Yeah? But they're successful people. There are those isolated cases, and I don't argue at all. Okay? Yeah.
And one of the isolated cases in the studio with you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yes,
yeah. So I'm giving this background information because this is where it matters most. Unless we can focus, unless we can invest there, then I'm not sure how we are going to build people who are competent. Because we need people to develop physically, we need people to develop mentally. In fact, there have been a lot of studies, scientific studies, a lot of them, where if somebody is lacking these nutrients that I talked about, okay, so generally nutrition is not good. There's undernutrition. What is going to happen is that this person will be stunted, not only stunted physically, but also the cognitive function will be impaired. Are we together, Pastor? Yeah. The cognitive function, so meaning we're talking about the brain here. Yeah. And it has also been shown that, education attainment will also be low. It has been shown that, such people, who didn't have very good nutrition when they were young, that period of the under 5, okay? Even when they grow up, they may start a business. They may start in timber, but a business which will not grow. They may get a job, but a job where they will not have this attitude to, they will just be ordinary workers. And when you scan our Zambian population, where are we? I leave it to you to interpret. Where are we in terms of this thing that I have mentioned?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is nutrition, nutrition alone. So undernutrition leads to not only physical, growth impairment, but also in terms of the cognitive function of a human being. So meaning that those three things that I talked about are affected. The second aspect is education. The human journey, in as far as education is concerned, begins not when we enter college or university. The human journey begins at preschool.
Professor Musongole would say from the time a child is born. When a child is born, your friend, Professor...
Yes, indeed, is my very good friend, and we talk about these things.
And
yes,
he says from the time a child...
And he's very right. He's very right. Day one, you must start teaching a child. But now that is at the parental level, where you, the parents, take it, you must take it up. Begin from there. But I was talking about formal education, where you begin now, formal education, you start taking a child to school. Okay? Preschool is school. And so you begin from there in terms of the human journey for education. Yeah? So from there, primary school, secondary school, and then you enter tertiary. The most critical stage of our education is between 1 and 7 years. That's the most critical stage. When we are between 1 and 7 years old. Okay, so from preschool to primary school, you know, the early years of primary school, maybe grade 1, grade 2. The most critical. And so we must invest in the education of those young people, because it is during this time, during this time that the children are assimilating a lot of things. The brain is assimilating a lot of things. Remember, I said that a child at 5 years, in terms of brain development, they're at 90%. When they are, you know, 6 years, they're at 95%. So in fact, really, when you talk to a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, it's like you're talking to an adult. This is the time, depending on what you expose them to, this is what will define who they will be in future when they're like you and me. The most critical stage. Okay? So, if you expose them to the reading culture, they'll be reading. If you expose them to insults, they'll be insulting. If whatever you expose them, you know, we call this, this phase as a programming phase. A child is being programmed between 1 and 7. A child is being programmed. A lot of things are being stored in the subconscious. So when they grow up, in fact, according to science, 95% of our actions are actually coming from that stage.
Well, it's not just science, Professor. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, so that when he grows up, he will not depart from there. So the training and brain formation, like you are saying,
absolutely,
should be included in that 7-year or 7-year program.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. So this is the time that we must invest heavily. We must invest in the teachers. We need highly qualified teachers. Okay? And not only that, we also need the environment, the infrastructure. What infrastructure do you provide at preschool? What infrastructure do you provide at primary school? What infrastructure do you provide at secondary school, at college level, at university level? So there are two aspects here. You have got competent teachers and you've got the infrastructure. If you take it from preschool to university level, today, as we sit here, Pastor, things are not very good for us. Just infrastructure. Not only infrastructure, but the teacher quality as well. And when I say teacher, I don't necessarily mean just the teachers at primary and secondary, but even teachers. I call myself a teacher. Okay, so even in college and university, we are not investing. If you you go back to that government policy I talked about, the STI policy. Yeah, one of the things mentioned there at the tertiary level, we don't have staff development programs anymore. If they are there, there's very little that is happening. Okay, so what I'm saying, Pastor, is that education is what will make a person achieve those three things. There are what we call educational objectives, okay, which were coined some time back in the 50s by a person called Bloom and his colleagues. Okay, what are the objectives? What are the objectives of education? Okay, before I come to the Bloom's taxonomy, yeah, the role of education, first and foremost, the role of education is to create values, to shape up our attitudes and behaviors. That's the primary role of education, so that we can fit into society. We can do what society expects us to do. That's the primary role. primary role of education.
Repeat that.
Yeah, is to create values to shape our attitudes and behaviors.
But just on that,
To
Professor.
fit into what society expects.
Yeah, just that, Professor.
Yes.
Why is it that the same people who have attended this tertiary education,
Yeah.
they behave like they grew up in my village in Chinsali? And even to adapt to changing scientific challenges,
Yeah.
they just fail to take. Why is it that even with that knowledge, with education, things don't move as
This
they
is why you must go back to the early years. Remember, I mentioned the early years are the most critical. They are the most critical. And yet, how many of us think about preschool? Many times, this is public knowledge, by the way. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, many of the things that I was going to say is public knowledge. Everybody knows. What quality of teachers do we send to preschool? I leave it to you to interpret. All of us know. And my heart bleeds, Pastor. Many times when people who have not done well, say at grade 12, then say, teaching. This is public knowledge. What I'm saying here, I'm not. You are degrading. This is, the teaching profession is a noble profession. It's a high-level profession. Angela Merkel of Germany, when she was chancellor, she said, teachers are not common people, and common people are not teachers. But here, we want common people to be teachers. No, it doesn't work. Look, you send your child to preschool or grade 1, and then you don't have, quality teachers. You are entrusting this whole nation into these hands that aren't very capable. And you expect that these children will grow up to become great engineers, great, great pilots, great doctors, and so on. How? How will it happen? How will it happen? It won't. So that stage is the most critical, and we must invest there. Okay, so I mentioned the primary role of education. Then the secondary role is now what creates the knowledge and skill for our survival now. This is where now competition comes, where, nations now are competing. You want to be on top because you've got people who can innovate, but who can do great things.
But, Professor,
yeah,
surely we talked about Zambians being good at growing tomato, which goes to waste. We don't add value. Do I need to be a scientist like you to entertain questions? Why is it that we have plenty of mukula tree and other trees here? From one big mukula tree, I can make 2 million, 5 million toothpicks for export. Do I need to wait for toothpicks to come from China or South Africa? For me, those are some of the issues, Professor.
And this is why, Pastor, I've taken you back to where we begin from, where the human journey begins from. When we are in the womb, I've talked about nutrition. And then we are out of the womb. Now we start education. Two things only: nutrition, education. We have no choice. If we want to create these human beings who are going to be doing those toothpicks, who are going to be making machines, who are going to be manufacturing, adding value to all these things, manufacturing phones and so on, we must address those two things. Those two things. You don't address those, well, the situation will remain as it is.
How do you see the, because let me ask you this deliberate question.
Yes.
How do you see the economy of Zambia within this tenure that the UPND is in power? Because we can't wait for scientists with good nutrition and education to come and tend the economy. How do you see?
In fact, everything. So before I come to that, Pastor, you see, everything that we do is science. Well, so when I say science, I mean even religion must be run scientifically. Everything must be run scientifically. The way we run government, the way we run, you know, our churches, the way we run, whatever we do. Okay, you know, there's this great scientist, you know, Albert Einstein, who said that science without religion is lame, and the religion without science is blind. So all of us, including, you know, those of us who are pastoring people, we must run things scientifically. So science is everywhere. We cannot ignore it at all. And if anyone ignores it, then we will not go anywhere as a nation. We cannot ignore science. In agriculture, things are the way they are because we have ignored science. And in many other areas, because we have ignored science, so we're not making progress. Now I come to a question, okay? How do I see the economy? First of all, let me commend the new Dawn government. I think there are a lot of efforts that are being made. Okay? There's free education. Of course, it has got its own, you know, downside. You know, we are seeing youths, you know, being asked to form cooperatives so that, you know, we can help you in this and this and this. You know, we'll deliver inputs on time, and there are a lot of efforts being made. Yeah. But you see, when you analyze everything, yeah, with all this zeal, with all the zeal, we will not be a wealthy country. No, we will not be a wealthy country, because I'm sure everybody's desire is that we must be a wealthy country. For as long as we ignore science in our dealings, we ignore human capital as the thing that will propel this country, this nation, to higher heights. It won't happen, because it is human beings, Pastor, all the human beings. Everything shall be done by human beings,
Professor,
nobody else.
You are leaving me 5 steps behind.
Sorry.
Let me say this. You are a scientist. You are into education. This government has said there will be free education.
Yeah.
And are you aware that, like you said, there are some downside to that? Without scientific explanation, are you aware that some of the rich and the leaders in this nation are taking advantage of that free education by pulling their children from fee-paying schools,
Yeah.
and taking them to government schools?
Yes, I'm aware.
While the less privileged are not going to school. I've got those cases which come through these studios, which come through church. As a pastor, you hear so they've taken the children from fee paying,
I'm aware.
and they are coming now to the government schools.
I'm aware.
The less privileged, who have no one to speak for them, they are not getting spaces. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware, yes.
So how do we address such things? Yes, there is free education, but that free education is disadvantaging the less disadvantaged already. How do we address that? Scientifically, economically, how do we address that?
Okay, Pastor, it's a difficult question, and I may not go into how we address that, because we've got the leadership, capable leadership that should be able to address this issue. But I think from my side, my interest, my interest, and which should be the interest of the whole nation, is that with free education, are we going to invest enough to make sure that we have quality teachers at every level, and that we've got the proper infrastructure? We have laboratories, in the secondary schools, or if we start from the preschool, we have got toys, we have teaching aids, and all that. And as we move up, to primary, secondary, and tertiary education, do we have all the facilities? Do we have laboratories? Do we have workshops? Do we have the field facilities? Because remember, as we train a child, starting from preschool, we must ensure that this child will gain the skill. And the skill is gained through doing, not just hearing. There is a Chinese saying which says that I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. Okay, I do, I learn. In our education system right now, are we doing? Much of it, in fact, the entire education, value chain, much of what is there is hearing.
Yeah, but Professor,
we hear, we forget.
May I bring you back to the question?
Yeah.
You remember that here, you are representing the academia.
Yes.
I'm representing those who missed the first 1,000 days. And for the sake of those of us, I said, you see, when you say science is in everything.
Yes, in everything.
You explain that, and I'm saying now, why is it that this same free education, the people in power, when I say in power, I'm not meaning ministers or whatever. If they are there, that's okay. But the people with positions are now intimidating headmasters. They are intimidating teachers to say, you've got to enroll this. If you don't do this, I'll go to the PS. I'll go to the director of education. And here is my mother from Kalingalinga, who has no money whatsoever. And they say the school is full. This is where, while you are representing the academia, I'm representing this 1,000 days which were missed. How do we address the problem which is there? Whether scientifically or economically, how do we address this? Because this is national matters.
Yes,
and it really concerns me.
It's national matters.
I hear that a mother in Mutendere can't take to school because somebody from some higher offices has brought 5 of his nephews. And I think it's a serious issue that if you can't look at it academically, I'll look at it politically, I'll look at it as being another form of corruption and intimidation to the teachers.
Well, in fact, this is why I've tried to share with you and the nation about those 3 things. Primary role of education being attitude, because some of the things that we are mentioning, are to do with attitude, the way I behave towards other human beings. Even corruption is an attitude. It's an attitude thing. In fact, I would say, what is the best way of fighting corruption? What is the best way? I know that right now is massive effort, which is commendable, massive effort of fighting corruption. But I can tell you, Pastor, that you can end up putting everyone in jail. Corruption will still be there. It will be there. The best way of fighting corruption is starting where? Where the human journey begins from. That's the best way So you bring up a generation that is, that has a mind which is corrupt-free. Exactly. And so how to fight that, what you are talking about, is difficult for me, because here I think in this program, the question was, what will it take? What will it take to rebuild the Zambian economy?
Yes.
Exactly. What is the missing link? The missing link, there's nutrition. I've adequately addressed nutrition. There is education. In fact, if I should backtrack a little bit, I had decided wrong about these objectives, educational objectives. Okay? The first one, as we go through the ladder, okay, is remembering. So a learner is there just to recall things that they were taught. And then we move to the next ladder, which is now understanding, where you can now begin to understand, oh, this happens because of ABC. So we're no longer just at the remembering stage. And then we move to the next stage, which is application. You can apply things that you have learned, you have understood. You can apply, in a real life situation. And then beyond that, you now reach a critical, what we call critical thinking, where you can now do analysis. Yeah. You can separate things. You can separate sense from nonsense. And then you now move on to, evaluation, where, you can make a judgment and stand by your judgment. And the last one, the ultimate, is creation. Creation, which is the innovation that I talked about, the skill. The question is, where are we in our Zambian education system? By the way, there is a very good document. It's a government document again. Yeah, the Zambia Education Curriculum Framework, 2013. Fantastic document. Everything is there. What sort of competencies do we expect at preschool, at primary, at secondary, at tertiary?
Yeah.
What is it that we expect? It's a very good document. How many people even know about the existence of this document? As I mentioned, those of us in academia will now start using those documents just to extract data for us to write proposals, and we win some projects, and then we do some research and we get funded. It ends there. We should be utilizing this. This is why statistics are there. I've mentioned to you the poverty levels in this country. How many of us even talk about poverty levels? The stunting levels, it's 40%. I mean, people should get worried. I remember, a number of years ago, 2016, and I was watching, it was a news item on ZNBC, yeah, where the then Minister of Health, made a statement about, stuntedness. At that time, was saying 45% of the under 5s are stunted. Yeah. And apart from, physical stuntedness, there's also, mental impairment. He made a ministerial statement in Parliament, 45%. Question is, who was touched by that? Was there any reaction from the parliamentarians? No. What about himself, the one who was making, that statement? Was he touched by that? Well, it was just a statement, and it ended there. I've never heard anyone even talk about it. It is only when we go in workshops, some of us who attend these workshops, where, if there's anyone from the nutrition, especially the National Food and Nutrition Commission, well, they give you these statistics. But they're just statistics. It ends there. Now, we must be concerned about these statistics that we are generating, because the statistics are there to inform policy and what action we must take. They're not just statistics for nothing. Yeah. So, Pastor, what I'm saying is that education has a big role to play in the building of human capital, starting from preschool. I don't know the budget at preschool, And you see, the other thing is that we have tended to operate in silos as teachers. Okay? So preschool teachers, they are just open as preschool teachers. Primary school teachers, they also operate as preschool teachers. I mean, primary school teachers. Secondary school teachers, they are alone. University teachers, we are alone. We don't link things where we are coming from.
No.
This creates a big problem, and I don't think that this will take us anywhere.
Professor.
Yes, Pastor.
I must say that I still want to be understood.
Yes.
From your scientific knowledge, how we can help and build this economy. I do not understand, for example, things like giving tax-free mining, the escalating prices of electricity and fuel. Those things, while we are analyzing and looking at the economy, from every angle academically, in the meantime, people are dying, and people are complaining. Their salaries can't sustain electricity bills, can't sustain fuel, can't sustain this. How do we build the economy? I appreciate what you are saying. I want you to also join my camp as a pastor who deals with these people who are greatly affected. And I'm passionate about joining the scientific world with my little knowledge, so that you can educate me, lead me to a place where you and I can reduce the ZESCO tariffs, which are choking people, the fuel, the kwacha inflation, which is just going down and down. All these issues, I think I need to help from you people, the academias, how to deal with these issues.
It's just that, Pastor, now you want to take me into a different direction. There are those who are economists. There are those who have studied, different. So economy can be discussed from different angles, from political angle, from spiritual angle, from economics angle, and so on. So issues of inflation, taxes, and so on. Economists will come and discuss those things. I know how. I even came to learn that, well, the Bank of Zambia policy rate goes up because they want to discourage people from borrowing, so that there isn't too much money out in circulation. Otherwise, inflation just shoots up. So they must control. And our friends are they're trained to do those things. Okay, but what I'm saying, Pastor. And this is the missing link. And we have been talking about these things for a long time. And I agree with you, people are suffering. No question about that. I mean, I come from I see it. So sometimes when people come up and say, no, look, we can do this, you can't suffer. Why are we suffering? But you see, we forget one thing. It's our capacity. So this is the human capital I'm talking about. Without the human capital, you can try to move hills and mountains. You can do the best that you want to do. You will not arrive there. You will not, because there must be human beings who are competent to do things. Yes.
I'll be coming back to you, Professor. If you remember, during our conference, the agriculture conference, you are a scientist and you have what it takes. The reason why my wife and I are fond of YAMBAYAMBA, Professor Musongole, we don't want to depart from the dome of knowledge. Because the Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Correct.
If you don't have the knowledge, you are doomed.
Absolutely.
Today, my wife and I were privileged to have a Zoom call for about 1 hour, 26 minutes. That Zoom call, Professor, like we said to Team Zambia, ever since we began these conferences with my wife, I believe with all my heart that I can add value, and I'll add value to this nation.
Absolutely.
Because the things that you have taught us, how to do agriculture, it's you that taught us on this platform that agriculture should be looked at as a business.
Yes.
It must be looked at as an art.
Yes.
It must be looked at as a profession.
Yes. Absolutely.
I've never forgotten that.
Yes. Yes.
And from that angle, and when I do some research here and there, one of the questions that I was asked today with my wife, one of the people on the panel said, Pastor Chiluba, can $200 million put your agriculture sector into a good place? My answer was, I need to go back and consult the people who qualify into that to draw up the budget. Because if I had said yes, suppose it's small, suppose it's high, I don't want to behave like an illiterate who just says Kashnesko beef 12 bantu abantu n'abafula. There has to be a budget. So what I'm saying is, Professor, I am here by the grace of God to add value.
Absolutely.
And I'm here to cling to people like you and all your friends. This is why I say to these politicians who are my good friends,
yes,
me, I don't spare them. If you have seen from times of Kaunda,
that's right.
I want somebody to do the right thing.
Yeah, no, that's very important.
When you have politicians who have people like you, into cabinet, into permanent secretaries, into this, the economy would not be here where we are. And let's not cheat ourselves. If you are going to pick a PS because he supported you and is a member of your party, and in the head there is got half brains, where are you taking the economy? So I say these things out of pain, because people like you, when you are sidelined, not every one of us will follow your path. When the 50 of you scientists can find your way in one way or the other to advise the president, to advise the government and the minister, things will not be like this. But sometimes decision makers are surrounded by political cadres who danced the most during the elections, and they've got the influence to decide the future of this nation. That's where my pain is.
Yeah, well, Pastor, and this is why I thought I should share this with you and the nation. Where is the missing link? It's human capital. That's the missing link.
The human capital.
Basically, it's a human capital defined as competent human beings.
With knowledge.
With knowledge,
with skill
and
good attitude.
And good attitude. Okay? So we must all understand, when we take our children to school, what is the primary role of education? Eventually, it's primary and secondary roles. We must understand the primary and secondary roles. Okay? Primary is attitude. Yeah. Secondary, it's skill, knowledge and skill. Unless we can produce these human beings with those three things, we will do everything that we want to do. We will do everything that we want to do under the sun.
And we
will not reach there. This I want to make it clear to you and my fellow countrymen and women. We shall not reach the Tell me how. How shall we? How shall we? So there is no magic. Yeah, there's no magic in development. Here we are saying, look, Zambia is number 4 in terms of natural resources. We are rich. The DRC is perhaps the richest country in the whole world. The whole world.
And it ranks number 1 in Africa.
Exactly. In terms of resources, natural resources, it's number 1 not only in Africa, but the whole world. But where are we? Where are we? So, Pastor, let us, countrymen and women, the youths out there, let's not cheat ourselves. Let's not be happy with the little that we have. In fact, once we accept that, we've got this challenge, or these challenges, that's step number 1 of overcoming the challenges. If you don't accept, you say, no, we are doing well. As I hear in many circles, no, look, we are doing fantastic. This is a very good economy. But a good economy with 60% of poverty, 40% of stunted-ness. First of all, just 1% of stunted-ness in the population, in our population.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. It's 180,000 human beings at 1%.
Now you talk about 40%.
40%.
My goodness.
Where are we? Where shall we take this nation to? Nowhere.
Professor,
we must invest
in human capital.
There are no 2 ways, unfortunately.
That's the missing link.
How I wish there was another way. That's the missing link. Human capital.
In every sector of life.
In every sector of life. Everywhere. It's a human capital. Let's not cheat ourselves to say we're going to develop the agricultural sector. No, we will not. Or we are going to develop the tourism sector. No, we will not.
Professor,
we are going to develop the mining sector. No, we will not.
I will need you.
We will not.
I will need you with your friends. You know my passion for this nation.
Yes.
And I'll still come back to you.
Sure.
In developing the human capital, I want the director to show the clip of what we are doing. Sometimes the nation underestimates what value we can add to the nation.
Indeed.
Through the grace and the contact and the blessings God has given me, on the 26th of July, we are sending the boys into the United States to go and participate in the World Cup Youth League, which has begun by the Americans. And there are 2 teams that have been invited from Africa. One from Nigeria, and the second one, Camnet Academy.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Those 22 boys we are sending there, Professor, most of them, it's the youths under 19. Should they play good soccer, there will be over 60 scouts from around the world. Should they play well, some of your children will never return. They will be given 100% scholarships in the States.
Correct.
That is the value that my wife and I are bringing to the table.
That is fantastic, Pastor, and I must commend you for that. But let me just also add that here we are talking about it.
Add.
Yes, please.
That is one team. We are short of another team of young boys who are 19 probably. We've been given a privilege to be in Germany in the Bundesliga there. They want professionals, boys from Africa. And the top scout of the people in Germany who want African players, we communicate almost on a weekly basis. And I count it a privilege that the boys who are going to Germany, they also may not come. Those are not going as students. They are going as semi-pros who may join the Patson Dakas of this world. So because of that, the other team leaves on the 26th of July. I mean 22nd of July, because they have got to be in the States for 26th of July for the tournament. The other team leaves for Germany on the 28th, 26th, 7th, because they've got to be in Germany the 1st of August. The tournament starts there. So we have 22 boys this side, 22 boys this side, and our coaches are saying, Pastor, we need good players. There we are, Mr. Professor. It doesn't take somebody to go to Mlungushi University, to go to Oxford University, just in case you missed your opportunity to be what? We can still, through soccer, add value to this nation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, and I commend you. In fact, sport, sport is one thing that adds a lot of value to any sport. I mean, to the economy, to the country. It adds a lot of value. But the comment that I wanted to add, is that here in our own country, we must reach the levels where, most of our boys and girls can train to the highest level here. You get my point?
In Zambia.
In Zambia. Why are we not reaching there? Why don't we develop the facilities? And human capital in terms of coaches who can train these young people to reach the very high, the highest levels, that anyone can reach, whether they're in Europe, they're in America, and so on. So I thought I should just add that so that people can also appreciate that we must begin building capacity here. You see, many times the pastor, we've talked about, let's build capacity. Let's build. It's very common on our lips. Let's build capacity. But we forget that where many of us are coming from, our backgrounds, it's difficult for us to reach the capacity that we want. Okay? Because we missed it during the under 5 period. We missed it when we entered the school. We missed a lot of things along the way. And in the end, we're just ordinary people.
Professor, I'll come back to you, and we allow our Zambian people to join us in these few minutes. But I like and I appreciate what you have said, that we must build capacity. And the Camnet Stars has 3 capable coaches, Coach Chikwanda, Coach Musonda, and Coach Bwalia. They are doing these, are coaches who have done the best in this country and outside. They've coached top teams. And we have said, why is it that we can't do it here? Like you are talking about human capital.
Yes.
I agree with you 100%. If you don't respect yourself, like we say in Bembo, if you don't believe in yourself, you don't respect yourself, nobody will respect you.
No, nobody will respect you.
And nobody will listen to you.
Absolutely.
So allow me to play this for the youths in Lusaka and for those who have access, because there will be trials this Sunday. The coaches will be looking at some more boys, because we need 22 for the US, 22 for Germany, and they must be good players, not just because you know how to kick the ball.
Sure.
Allow me to ask my director to give us this advert.
Are you a talented and gifted soccer player? Camnet Stars will be conducting trials for young players between the age of 14 and 16 years. You never know, you could be America or Europe bound this July.
We need to pick some players so that we can come up with a very powerful squad which is supposed to travel outside the country and do a lot of work for Zambian football.
Venue, Kablonga Boys Secondary School Playgrounds. Time, 14 hours. You could be the next big soccer star in Europe. See you this Sunday, 20th February 2022. Are you a talented and gifted soccer player? Camnet Stars will be conducting trials for young players between the age of 14 and 16 years. You never know, you could be America or Europe bound this July.
We need to pick some players so that we can come up with a very powerful squad which is supposed to travel outside the country and do a lot of work for Zambian football.
Venue, Kablonga Boys Secondary School Playgrounds. Time, 14 hours. You could be the next big soccer star in Europe. See you this Sunday, 20th February 2022.
Well, dear Camnet TV viewers, that clip I just played it for those of you who love your children, and you know that sport can be what it is. I've told the parents who come for this, Professor, that we've got the salaries of what these boys get in Europe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If one boy is picked there, the least those boys can get to the teams where they are going, it's £65,000 every Friday, which is £260,000 every month, getting into the account of Zambia.
There we are.
Getting into the, and I think that's a big value to the nation.
No, it is, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, sport, where it is developed, it's a big, it's a big thing to the economy. It adds a lot of value to the economy, a lot of value. Yeah, and remember that sportsmen and women, they are actually the most highly paid.
Absolutely.
I mean, these boys will be able to pay me for just from their one salary. They will pay me the whole year. Yeah, that's what it is. So sport can bring a lot of value. See, what I'm saying is that let us develop our own human capacity here.
Who
can teach and
coach.
Exactly. So that they transform that talent. Because remember, I was hearing what the commentator was saying, that, you know, talented, you know, young boys and so on. Very talented, I could say that. Yeah. Well, skill, probably not yet, but talented. Talent, they go the talent. Because it's telling something, you know, it's natural, something that probably, you know, you were born with or something like that. Remember a bit of skill, but skill now comes in through training. Like I think where they are going there now, they will now build on their talent to now that will be transformed into a skill.
Absolutely.
A skill, you know, where they can innovate. And by innovation in soccer, I mean, you know, you can create a new dribble, you know, how you can dribble, you know, or how you can kick. We sort of these creations, very creative minds by some players. They'll be able to do that. So then you see, oh, this player has a skill. This is what we want to see in our country.
Absolutely.
So the education system must transform a young person who started at preschool into a competent person when they reach college or university level. Somebody who is able to create
and stand on their own.
Exactly. It's, you know, today we can tell these youths, no, you go and stand on your own. What are you doing on the streets and so on? Where is the competence? What do they have? I think we are being very, very unfair to these young people.
Dear Camnet TV viewers,
extremely unfair.
Let's invite the callers and let's invite the text messages. We have a few minutes here. If you have a question for Professor YAMBAYAMBA, you have a question for me, or you want to share some ideas, we must build this nation together. Zambia is too big for the few cabinet ministers and the president. It should not be, no, because I'm in this party, I'm in that party. Let's come together as one Zambia, one nation, each one of us, Professor, we can add value
Absolutely.
to this nation.
Absolutely.
Without jealous to say HH is in power, I must see his downfall, or this one is in power. We should start thinking in a national way,
Absolutely.
not in a political way.
Absolutely.
These are my views. Text messages and phone calls, Mr. Director. Please give us the text message. The problem is inadequate human capital in Zambia, and also not investing in research by government. This is Matulanga in Kalulushi. Just what you said.
Exactly. If I can comment, or maybe I'll comment after. Or should I comment on that?
Yes, you can comment.
Yes.
Inadequate human capital.
Yeah, inadequate human capital, no investment in research. You know, where do you go without research and development? Where do you go? You can't innovate. It is only by investing in research that your nation will move from point A to point B to point C. You know, he has said it. He has said it all.
Absolutely.
He has said it all. But where are we in terms of research?
And human capital.
We are nowhere. We are nowhere. The little research that we may be doing in universities and colleges.
There is a call, Professor.
Okay.
Let's pick it up. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
How are you?
I'm okay.
You're okay. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Chingola.
From where?
I'm calling from Chingola.
From Chingola. How old are you, sir?
I'm okay.
You're okay. How old are you?
Oh. Okay,
Good evening, sir. How old is your son? Is what?
11 years.
11 years. That man, that young boy was born for greatness. He wants to say something. Will you say it on his behalf, sir?
Okay.
Sorry, your line is not clear. And maybe you drop the line and call back. We still have some minutes in the studio. Give us another text. It's a pity that the young man wanted to contribute. The other problem is our education system is focused on theories, not practicals. The moment our
Forget about development.
no practical.
Education. Forget about development, because where shall we go? Yeah. Here we are, a child doesn't proceed beyond grade 9. We say, oh no, you can go and do fishing, do aquaculture. They may attend 2 weeks training. What are you giving them?
Which is not sufficient.
Nothing. You are just sending them to poverty, to more poverty. Let us not trivialize things. Research is this. Our friends in the what we call the developed world, they are there because of R&D. And there's always this question: who should fund research? Look,
of course the government should.
Research is a public good.
Yeah, the government.
So, funding can only come from the public account. Anything else is just a bonus. If you get funding from donors and so on, well and good. But the primary funding institution cannot be government. Just like education. Education is a public good. Who should fund education? It can only come from the public account.
Let's pick some more text messages, Professor,
Yes.
and then you answer some more questions. Give us, Mr. Director, some messages so that we can read them. Pastor, this matter is another matter. Has education lost value? Educationists of those days were problem solvers, but today the problems are all over. Where are we going? I think where have we gone wrong?
Yeah.
Why not make corrections and move on? Listener in Chilabombwe.
The corrections are what I've talked about. If we don't do that, let's forget.
Human capital.
Human capital.
Who have got the knowledge, the skill, and the good attitude.
And the attitude.
And
we begin from where the human journey begins. You know, training a pilot doesn't begin when one goes to the, to the college for pilot training. Or training a doctor doesn't begin when they go to the medical school. Or an engineer when they go to the engineer. No, it doesn't begin there. It begins from home.
Charity begins at home.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
In terms of formal education, it begins at preschool.
Let's pick up this call, Professor. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
No, my name is Fred Atari, calling from Italy.
What's your name? What's your name?
I'm very happy the way you put it in. I want to find out, is it true that we have only Zambian scientists? Because why I ask this question, I fail to understand, even to make it just our own vaccine in 1964, we said making our own vaccine. Then even cannot make it in 1964. So even the form of Papa and Zambia, but to make the cables, the paper cables, we need to take it to Saudi. I think we need to come so that we can make some of things in example to always manufacture. So I want to appreciate the way that is possible. I'm very so happy. This is one thing more than the that the machine is better. But yes, you have things you get to the way you do it. I'm very happy. Thank you so much for this.
What's your name, sir? What's your name, sir?
No, my name is Fred.
Who? Flavor.
Yes.
Flavor, we're very thankful to God for your contribution. Have you heard what he's talked about since independence?
Yes.
Where are the scientists of Zambia who can create our own vaccine, not getting Johnson, and where are the people who can go back to Zamefa and purify copper and use it like you said. That let's add value. Let's not send the raw copper.
Absolutely.
But government after government, including the UPND, you'll be seeing trucks coming from Chirabombwe going to South Africa. Who is going to stop that road?
Even the food that we produce, what value do we add? You did mention you produce tomatoes which go to waste. You know, at the primary level, there is a lot that is being produced, although we can do better than that, much better, 10, 20 times than what we are doing now. But even the little that we produce, you know, our own staple food, maize, much of it just goes to waste. According to experts in crop science, they will tell you 50% of the maize just either through diseases or pests or just these post-harvest losses. 50% you lose. It's the competence levels we're talking about. Human capital.
This human capital you are emphasizing.
Human capital. Human capital.
This is why I said, Professor, all the governments, not just UPN, all the governments are to blame, because you could have been harvested from the time you were in university. They noticed this child is brilliant. Now you've got gray hair. God has conferred you with that confetti, which is white. Who is going to take over from?
So we need to build our own scientists, our own people who can practically do things.
within the local context.
Of course.
And we can find our own vaccine, like Flavors talked about.
There's nothing impossible.
It's research and development.
It's first of all training the human capital.
Yeah.
Who can do what you want them to do.
There is a call. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. Yes, sir. What's your name and where you calling from?
So this is Dr. Mukandawire. I'm calling from Rwanda.
Dr. Mukandawire, how is Rwanda?
Rwanda is first good. It was raining this afternoon.
We thank God. We wished it was here in Lusaka. Dr. Mukandawire, please go ahead. You are a regular viewer of this station, and we appreciate you so much.
No, thank you so much.
Yes, doctor.
Now, this program is quite educative.
Yes, sir.
And I thank you, Professor and Pastor Moses. This is commendable.
Amen. Thank you.
I want to comment on the human capital.
Correct.
Now, we are talking about human capital. I'll give an example. One on free education. This free education has brought inflated numbers of pupils in the class. And then you are talking about developing these young ones to the required standard. But how do you develop when you have a class of 70, 100 in one class? That is a preschool. How possible is that we can obtain quality from that? You know, and the adult.
Yes, sir, we are listening.
And then the other thing is you have our type of education. You know, one, the way we recruit teachers. People apply, and then we just pick at random, and we say, well, these are the teachers we are going to employ. There must be a method. People must go through up to the debate so that we have the right people, and so that we can have people who have a heart, who have values, who are going to impact our children. Otherwise, we are mercenaries in the teaching fraternity, you know, and we cannot produce the required material, the capital that we are talking about. And the other thing is the way our education system is set up. And you look at the principle, you have said this is the very important stage. And of course, we need to qualify the teachers. I cannot agree more than what you are saying, that we need to have a very qualified teachers at that level. But look at the way we employ those teachers. Everybody, even a person who is not trained, is teaching in preschool. And this is that we are not enough. You have been going to primary school, and then the primary school, which is also an important stage, we give them knowledge, and we want them to develop to a higher to where they can obtain skills. But then look at also the way our education system is set up. You have 7 subjects, 9 subjects, you know, one child. Why not concentrate on the abilities of these children so that they can progress in those main subjects they are good, so that from there you can have the human capital that you need to give it up to university. But then we talk about it, 5 O-levels to enter a university. I mean, are we really serious in developing the capital that we need? Thank you so much.
I'll comment from the last what Dr. Mukandawire said.
Yes,
My wife and I
have
been insisting on what Professor Dr. Mukandawire said. The education system. You want to produce a historian. You want to produce somebody who is going to put the history of Zambia together.
Yeah.
And you are demanding 9 subjects for him to go to university. Whereas the education system in America, if you are not good in mathematics, you are good in geography, they will produce a professor of geography.
Yeah.
They never throw away people, but here.
Yeah. I mean, I can't agree more. You know, what Dr. Mukandawere has mentioned is spot on. Is spot on. You see, the perception that we have about education in this country is that when I finish my education, whether my college or university, degree, I should sit in an office and do. We don't think about anything else. In fact, there are very few professions. Even when you hear teachers encouraging children, they'll be talking about, oh, you should become a lawyer, or you should become a doctor, or you should become an engineer, and it ends there. So meaning that others are not professions. They even forget that their only profession, the teaching profession, this is the only profession among all the professions, the only profession that teaches everybody else.
This is what Dr. Mukandawere is talking about, the recruitment of teachers.
Exactly. But who wants to become a teacher today in our country? There are not many, because we have downgraded the teaching profession to a level where it's no longer what it should be.
A permanent secretary becomes the boss to the teachers.
So I think that we need to really have a relook on this, the teaching profession. These are the people in whose hands we entrust the entire nation.
And the future of the nation. But we have people who, as Dr. Mukandawere mentioned, if I can just interpret, who are becoming teachers, not because they have the passion for it. No, because there are no jobs.
Because there are no jobs, so I say, oh, the only thing I can do is teaching. So let me go, wow. I mean, where are we going? Yeah. So let children go to where they want to be. Those who want to be footballers, encourage them to go that direction. Those who want to, to do other sports, encourage them to go that direction. Those who want to do business, encourage them from the beginning. Not when they have finished grade 12. No. Remember, I mentioned the most critical stage is the under 5 stage, or let me say from 1 to 7 years. That's the most critical stage. In fact, we must introduce critical thinking at that level. Let them be independent. At the age of 5, remember, age of 5, in terms of brain development, they're already at 90%. So they can begin making independent decisions. At that level, they must be critical, introduce critical thinking. And then as they advance to 9 years, it's another level of critical thinking.
This is where
12 years, another level of critical thinking.
This is where, Professor, I blame our parents, which is the government. Because if the parents are not setting standards for their children,
absolutely,
you are going nowhere.
Yeah.
And the government, the people of Zambia, should hold the governments of the day responsible.
Absolutely.
Because education is human right.
Absolutely.
We don't have to apologize.
No, you're right.
Buying food and saying, why did you bring me on earth if you can't provide the food?
So education is not just going to school and then you end up now just, you just know how to read and write. Though that seems to be the kind of education we have. It's literacy. Literacy, I know how to read and write. But what competence do you have? What can you do?
Professor.
It's not just knowing how to read and write. Then say, oh yeah, he's educated. No, he's not educated.
Professor.
Yes,
Dr. Mukandawere spoke about the inflated numbers of pupils in classroom. And this problem, I want to address His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, and the Minister of Education. Don't underestimate that. We thank you for bringing free education in Zambia, but you didn't put the mechanisms and how to check who qualifies. There are rich people, there are people in the government who are taking advantage of the poor in society. Mr. President, revisit this again. Otherwise, you are going to educate the people who are already able, who can manage. Feeding the already fed, that should not be the case.
Okay, the angle I want to take it for myself is, you know, these big numbers in classrooms. A class is, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. And you expect that these children
Will have attention.
will have attention from the teacher and will actually progress and become great people who can contribute to society. No, they won't. No. No. How? Somebody needs to show me how this will be done. There is a maximum number that a teacher can handle in a class. But you know, these numbers, as Dr. Mukandawire mentioned, they are not uncommon, you know, in some areas. So we need to have an education system that takes into account how many pupils a teacher can handle. And then not only that, is provide the environment, enabling environment for these young ones to learn to do. Not just knowing how to read and write, but they learn how to do. That's how you develop the skill. You know, you are pumping them with a lot of things. And remember, the brains are developing at the high rate. They can handle literally anything. So, just, you know, bring up things that stimulate their brains. Yeah. To begin thinking at a different level. You are building human capital. Yeah. By the time they are done with their college, with their university, they can create things. That must be the ultimate.
My wife is a professional teacher. She taught from 1994, and is it 94? 84. To 94, she went on early retirement in 1994. But at one time, she handled a class where there were 110. And when she gives you the challenges to give each child the attention they need, I think this is one point also Dr. Mukandawire has brought.
He has
that teachers should not be burdened, because you develop a relationship with teachers and pupils.
That's right.
You've got to know their problems, their challenges, and all that. You know.
Yeah, each child must receive the attention you know, due to them. That's very important. But I keep emphasizing, provide the infrastructure. Today you go to secondary schools, laboratories are either dilapidated or they're absent. So now you wonder, and you're training scientists, these will become scientists. They go to college or university, they've never even touched a test tube. Probably there was a time maybe when a teacher was just demonstrating to them, but they were far, and if there are many in a class.
No practicals.
No practicals.
Professor, let's pick up some few. We are running out of time. Please give us one text after another, no phone call. Give it to us back to back so that we may write something for our future consideration. Great program, great men. Indeed, we need implementers of policies. Our president must appoint performers. This is Chimwanga in Livingstone. Thank you, Mr. Chimwanga. Mr. President, you are hearing. This starts with Andy. You and our scientists, us Zambians and other African countries, are fond of too much talking, theories, than practice. We are non-producers, especially at youth stage, except Natuliamo, except we have taken something. That's how our government have shown us as a way of life through humanism philosophy as opposed to self-reliance. This is Enos Mulenga from somewhere. Enos Mulenga, we are so thankful. Let's read the messages together. This is good, Pastor and Professor. Human capital is very important. It's true. Those of us privileged to sit in boardrooms, we see it. Professor, you are right. Critical thinking is lacking a great deal. This is Evaristo. He goes in the boardroom, that in the boardroom we don't produce critical thinking, and this moves from the boardroom to cabinet. Sometimes we don't produce critical thinking. You know, our environment also plays a key role in our struggles as individuals. There is little or no inspiration from people who have achieved genuinely in society. Kabwe from Lusaka, and this is our last text. We are into news time. Professor, your last words. We are about to go into the news before my director cuts us. Your last words to the nation.
The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking.
Say that again.
Yeah. The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking.
I'm telling you.
You know, this is what Albert Einstein said.
But Albert Einstein took the scripture which says, as a man thinks, so is he. Absolutely. He just paraphrased the word of God.
You know, you see, God has given us this beautiful,
absolutely
beautiful, wealthy in terms of natural resources. Everything about it is good. And yet, look at the poverty levels. Look at you know, just the lack of making things to make our country become wealthy in terms of economic development. We need to just do it. Youths are the most valuable resource. Youths, and I'm glad Enos, you know, Mulenga, you know, talked about, you know, the youths. Himself, I'm sure, is a youth. They are the most valuable resource in any nation. We must invest in the youths, and we must go back to where the human journey begins. We will not invest somewhere in the middle. Begin from where the human journey begins. Human capital is the missing link in our socio-economic development from two angles: nutrition and education.
Professor, I can't thank you enough for what you've become to this station. And like I said, this knowledge is important. We cannot all think at the same level. What you've brought us tonight, people are able to tell that probably my first 1,000 years, there was no attention. And that point should not escape the people of Zambia, that most of us, the first 1,000 years, in attire. So let's go back to human capital with knowledge, with skill, with education. What the professors brought here, and I appeal to government leaders, I appeal to His Excellency, please, when you are selecting people, go outside the UPND. Go outside. I know, Mr. President, you mean well for this nation, but let's select people like him. And I didn't call him to campaign.
I hope you are not campaigning for me.
No. Well, even if I campaign for you, it's okay. But we need the human capital in this nation. We need people. I can only wish you the best, Professor, and may God bring students to Mulungushi University, and they should know that's where you are. And Cabinet TV, we will talk about your college someday, your university. Dear Cabinet TV viewers, I want you to know that you were born for greatness, and all of you in Lusaka, or those of you who've got boys between the age of 14 and 16, this Sunday at 2 o'clock at Kablonga Boys, you never know. Your son could make a team going to either Germany or United States in July. May God bless you. You never know what God does. On behalf of my wife, the CEO of this great broadcast, Pastor Victoria Chilwa, on behalf of the technicians on duty, our journalists who keep this engine running, the church leaders, Healing Word Ministries, I salute you. But above all, you CamNet viewers, you are just awesome. Keep watching CamNet TV, because CamNet TV is not just another channel. Bye-bye.